Stop podcast surfing. You're in the right place. I've always wanted to sing. Hi, everyone. I am your host, Kimbralon B. I'm a licensed counselor, but I'm not your counselor. And I'm also the host of Good Tea and Reads. So I created Good Tea and Read so we could use everyday topics, issues, and current events to explain the importance of mental health awareness. Most mental health discussions are so important because so many people suffer in silence or do not realize that they're dealing with mental health issues because of stigma, society, and family expectations, and other reasons. Some episodes on Good Tea and Reads are heavy and will make us think. Other episodes will be very enlightening or refreshing. But either way, you will have an awesome experience. Here's the disclaimer. Any information shared on Good Tea and Reads is not a substitute for seeking professional care from another professional. Any information shared on Good Tea and Reads is not meant to diagnose the subjects or persons discussed on this podcast. Also, any information shared on this show is for conversational, inspirational, and educational purposes as well. So, all right, this intro is long enough. All right, so go grab your cups really quick. Go, 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 go. So I can pour this piping hot tea. Meet me inside on this episode in 1, 2, 3. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Good Tea and Reads. I am your hostess with the mostest, Kimbralon B. Hi, everybody. How's it been going? How you been? Hope that you've been okay and you've been doing your self-care homework. Take care of yourself. I'm not sure when you're listening to this show, but if it's during the holidays, just know the holidays can bring an ebb and flow of emotions, right? Or you may be listening to this show after the holidays. Even after the holidays, you may feel an ebb and flow of emotions, i.e., some people just go a little bit extreme to make sure that they're buying gifts, and it may actually touch their pocketbooks, right? And probably not in the best way, but if you start having those emotions, just take a pause, create a budget, and go from there. Also, if you're listening to this show and it's in the new year, usually we're excited. We set those goals of everything that we didn't get to accomplish in the year before. We set those goals. We're going to do this. Some people may call them resolutions. Sometimes we fancy them up with a bow tie and a dress, and then we'll call them goals. Well, however you want to call them, okay? Just know if you set those goals, you have an entire year or year after that, or a year after that, or 10 years after that. I don't know how your goals look. But just know if you don't meet your goals, you can always pivot and try something else. Okay. So just give yourself grace. All right. So this is Good Tea and Reads. The way the show came to be is that I realized, being a licensed counselor, that not everyone makes it to me, right? There's stigmas, there's other situations that stop people from coming to see a counselor. So I decided to really meet people where they're at. I took my show on the road and I was doing speaking engagements, and I decided to create this podcast. So whether you're sitting at home with nothing to watch on television, you can cue us up on YouTube, or if you're in your car, if you're at work, you can listen to Good Tea and Reads podcast, where we talk about all things mental health and everyday topics. The information here on Good Tea and Reads is for conversational, inspirational, and educational purposes and does not substitute you, yes, you, from seeking a higher level of care. Yes, I'm a licensed counselor. My guest today is a licensed counselor too. Yeah, counselors unite. But even though we do have the knowledge, we don't know your personal stories. That's why you have to pair up with someone that's closest to you that you can talk with and share those interesting points so they'll be able to create with you, with your help, be able to create a plan to help you meet your goals, whatever your goals look like, right? All right, so we're getting ready to get started because before we started recording, my guest, I shouldn't even say a guest, my friend, she's back. She's back again. We had the best conversation ever. And one thing I will say that separates this guest from my other guests, because I do appreciate everybody that comes on Good Tea and Reads, is that we were supposed to record earlier, and I had a situation happen where I had a loved one pass away. So I told my friend, my guest Thuy on the show, like, hey, I have this going on. I'm not in the right headspace. Totally understood. Totally understood and was willing to pivot. But one thing about friends, friends hold you accountable in a way. And I don't know if Thuy knows this or not, but we were talking about we have this plan because Twee is willing to come back, and we said we're going to talk about these different subjects on the show. And I somehow talked about the grieving process because it did cause me some emotions. And Twee was like, "Well, let's talk about that." Or have you talked about that? And I was like, "No, I avoided it." Y'all, I am really transparent on this show. I'm like, I will talk about all things mental health. I will talk about all topics. Grief was one that I purposely put off to the side, and I'll share more about that later. And Twee was like, I think we should talk about grief. And I was like, okay. And you need some people to challenge you with that at times, because I talk about that and I tell other people, hey, get somewhere and talk about it. And here I am, I'm clammed up, you all. So when you have somebody that keeps you accountable, they kind of get you out there, call you out. So we're going to actually talk about grief today. So this is going to be some of my raw emotions that's coming out in the show as well. So yeah, so get ready to buckle up your seatbelts. So before I get started, just in case you haven't heard my friend from the previous shows, if you haven't, go back and check out those shows because she is amazing. She is a friend. She's signed up. She's like, whenever you need me, I am there. And we are recording this show early. That's how you know when people are there, right? It's really early where we're at. But without further ado, I would like for you all to meet my friend or reintroduce my friend. Twee, can you share something about yourself?
Absolutely. And well, I'm always grateful to be back to the show as always. A couple of things before I'm introduce myself that I would just want to say is really brave of you, and thank you for picking the topic that we are today, because it is something is really difficult. I don't think I'm excited for it, but I think it's very important. It's a topic that I feel like a lot of people experiences and not a lot of talking. So I'm hoping that this will be support everyone, including myself and you, in this
Yes.
conversations, right? Well, I'm Twee. You can call me Twee, Triple T. I'm joking on that part. Don't call me Triple T. Twee, Tweety will be okay with me. I'm a mental health counselor, and a little bit about me. I am a trauma informs and also specialist when it coming to trauma, especially when it coming to related to complex PTSD, grief, body image issues, depression, anxiety related to the complex trauma. That's where I'm best at. The other thing that I'm really want to work and continue to work and support is for immigrations, Asian American communities in generally speaking. So that is something that I'm just passionate about, and that's something that I want to continue to support that community because I am belonging to that community, generally speaking, and of course BIPOC community with any BIPOC community and welcome them into the support and care system that I have right now. The modality that I work the most is EMDR, which is acceptance commitment therapy, and IFS, which is internal family system. And last but not least, my brand new favorite thing is brain spotting. Well, I just go into a 3 days training of that, and I cannot not finding a spot right now. So you will know what I mean when we actually do the treatment, and you're like, "Tweet, I cannot not see a spot." But it was a very experiential situation where I have uh, the great experiences with it, and I'm hoping to bring that skill set into treatment plan with clients at this point. And it's very gentle, so I love it.
Nice. Nice. Can't wait to hear about that journey. That is amazing, especially working with the BIPOC community. I think that's so amazing that you'll be introducing that because, you'll have that perspective on how to approach different cultures because, like we were sharing before we started recording, it is different. So, thank you for that. Thank you for taking that training and bringing it to the community as well. All right. All right, y'all. So the name of this show, I put everything with tea, or it has a tea based theme, right? Tea is the information that we like to share and reads, or occasionally I'll have authors on the show. But for this show, since we're going over information, the topic name is everybody just tune in. Oh, just playing. Is the bittersweet tea, and it's grief and mental health. So I want to open up with a quote about why we're talking about this show today. And then I want to share a little bit because, again, I'm giving like raw emotions at this point. So here's the quote: Grief is like emotion, it comes on waves, ebbing and flowing. Sometimes the water is calm, and sometimes it is overwhelming. All we can do is learn how to swim. And that's a quote by Vicky Harrison. And really, that quote, when I found it, actually described my year. It actually described 2025, if I can just date stamp that. And I'm going to share a little bit. I mean, we have so much material, so it'll probably more and more come out on the show. And this is the accountability piece. In 2025, in January, my parents were here. They were going to the store, every average day shenanigans. That's what they were doing. They were driving, they was walking, talking. As far as I know, there was no illness. Come and check on them. Hey, y'all do this, go to the doctor, blah, 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 everything else. And they like, yeah, yeah, yeah. They were just being parents. Because sometimes, or after a while, I should say, we become the adults. So they are our parents. They raise us, and then eventually, like, hey, did you do this? Are you taking care of yourself? And so that's what I was doing. I came back because my parents live in another state. So I came back to my own state. And then on a Saturday in February, my dad called and he was like, hey, I don't want you, worrying about me or coming home, but I just want you to know that I coughed up some blood. But it's no big deal. And I was like, oh, wait, what do you mean it's no big deal?
Mhm.
And I said, so you're gonna go to the doctor, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the doctor, but you don't have to worry about coming. So Thuy and listeners, at that time I was like, wait, my dad called me. I'm 1,000 miles away to tell me the symptoms that he was experiencing. And he also called my brother, which my brothers stay in the same state. And I was like, something isn't right. And guess what? I'm booking my ticket and I'm going home. That's what I said. So he probably knew that I was going to come anyway because I'm like, he didn't have to call. He could have kept that to himself. I called him that Sunday. It was the Super Bowl Sunday. He was still kind of talking. And he was like, yeah. And he says, yeah, I'm barely, getting through, but I'm going to go to the doctor. But he just sounded like he was a little bit weaker because my dad usually would get sick during the winter time. So I was kind of used to that, but this time it sounded just a little bit different. So he said he was going, and I'm like, my dad is stubborn. He knows that I'm away. So I don't know if he's going to go. So I told my daughter, who lives in the same state, hey, go check on your grandpa. Just like, hey, just stopping by. I don't want him to suspect anything because he called to give me that information. And so she went over there and then she called me after she left. So she took some soup and stuff and she just kind of played it off. And she says, Mom, she's like, Papa, that's what she called him. He isn't looking well. He's breathing. Any other time when you go over there, he'll sit up. And this time he just stayed laying down. And she's like, I just don't feel right. And she says, I have an appointment. I said, well, go back if you need to and just go back to check on him. So
Mm-hmm.
she went back to check on him and he was still laying there in the same spot and he was kind of delirious at that point. So she told him, I'm taking you to the hospital and I'm not taking no for an answer. And he was kind of moving a little bit slow. He was trying to text people, but his text was real, like it didn't like make any sense. So she took him to the hospital and they immediately put him on a BiPAP machine. So we skipped the tubes in the nose. It was just a full oxygen mask. And then from there, they said, we're admitting him. And my daughter said that she connected eyes with my dad in the emergency room. And she said it was something about the way he was looking at her like, this isn't going to go well. This isn't going to go as planned. So I actually made it there, Twee, that night, and I was actually able to have a conversation with my dad. He did still have the oxygen machine on. He was talking with that. It was really hard to hear him, but he was just sharing the details like he was really, really sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you knew I was kind of laughed about that. But I told him that he was going to be okay. I'm like, you're going to be okay. You're here. And so that was a Monday. By Wednesday, he was in ICU and they had to make the decision to put him on a ventilator, which the doctor was like, we have no option. This is what has to happen. And I was sitting in the waiting room and they're like, so do we do the do not resuscitate? And I was like, whoa, wait, wait, wait. How did we get here?
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
how did we get here? So, I had to make decisions surrounding that. And by Thursday, he tried to say something to me, but I just told him, just wait, because the people were frantic in the room. And it was something about how it was going in that room that I
Mm-hmm.
was like, something isn't going right. And
Mm-hmm.
then by Thursday, he had passed away. So that happened in February. My dad and my mom was really close, very close. I know people were like, "Well, yeah, of course they're close." They were married, but technically they had divorced years ago, but they still remained like really, really close. And my dad was helping my mom, and my mom was dealing with like some memory issues and stuff. So we were able to talk to her and let her know that my dad wasn't doing okay. I think she had realized that he's not doing okay. And I had to bring that piece up because now we're going into the next layer of grief. My dad passed away. My mom was just, kind of getting through. Me and my brother made this plan like, hey, move mom in with you because she didn't want to come out of state with me. She did not want to live in another state. She wanted to stay in her state.
Fair. Fair.
And she started declining. And we made the decision to call the hospital because like she was not acting her normal. So she went into the hospital and what was very interesting, she had the same illness my dad had. And I'm like, it is like 50 something days later. How do you get this? 50 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom, even though my dad, took a turn for the worse, my mom was still there. And the doctor was like, well, we're going to have to move her to a skilled nursing facility. And I was like, okay, but what does she need? How can I help her? Because at this point, Twee and listeners, I was like, wait, okay, so I lost a parent. So what
Yeah.
can I do to help her? The doctor said support. The doctor said, your mom is really depressed,
Mm.
and it's going to be up to her to find the strength to get better. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, now I'm in a situation that I can do nothing. I can only talk to her. So
Mhm.
she went into a skilled nursing facility, and I thought, okay, well, she can get better. And I know the aides there, they were so amazing. They was like, look, we've seen this situation before. Sounds like your mom has a broken heart, and it's going to really be up to her if she chooses to live or not. And I was like, what is happening again?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is wild. But then I was in the continuing grief for my dad. I was like, now everything seems like it is the same thing happening again with the next parent. So my mom started to decline again. And I was like, oh gosh, she wasn't getting better. And they said, well, your mom is really depressed. She wasn't trying to get better. She wasn't eating. My mom had stopped walking. I left the state she was in to come back to my state at the middle of March. I had to go back at the beginning of April. My mom was not walking. She was not caring for herself. That's how much she let herself decline. And then with my mom, I saw she wasn't getting better. So I had to talk to her, which was very interesting talking to her because I had to let her know because she wasn't really responding. She was just there. And I had to tell her, like, if you want to be with my dad, I get it. I said, I can't be him. I'm not him. We're not him because it was me and my brother. And I said, but if you stay here, I got you. And 2 days later, and it was in April, my mom passed away. So now I was like, this is horrible. I said, this sucks.
Mhm.
So then after that in May, my mom and my dad, so my dad took care of my mom, but my
Mhm.
mom and dad together took care of my aunt. And that was my
Mm.
mom's sister.
Mhm.
So I didn't even share it with her or her son. I didn't share it with her. But I think one of my uncles shared the news with my aunt about my mom
Mhm.
because my aunt knew about my dad. By the middle of May, she passed away. And I was like, what is happening? I'm
Wow.
like, so I said, so y'all just decided to, I guess y'all had a bond, a pact that y'all was going to stay
Mhm.
together, like one, two, three. So then
Mhm.
they passed away, and I was like, okay. I was like, I got to get to a place that I start grieving. And I do want to talk about this because I was like, I haven't even grieved yet. I need to find time to like grieve because I was just going, going, going. And
Right.
then I was like, kind of mooshing back in with life. I had periods where I would cry, other periods
Mm.
where I was happy, other periods where I was like, I'm not feeling nothing. Like, do I really miss my parents? Like, what's going on? It was just weird. Then other times I would be like, this sucks. And I'm just back in tears again. I'm like, you're
Mhm.
in the grief cycle. You talk to your
Yeah.
clients about being in grief. And now look at you moving into November.
Mm.
So here we go. It's November. Like, what's going on? I said, okay, let's try to get everything together. I'm having a medical procedure and everything. Let's get everything together. And then I went back to the state because it was my mom's birthday. I wanted to honor her in that state. They
Mhm.
had this ceremony at the cemetery for my dad. I wanted to be there, but in
Mhm.
between there was Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
So on Thanksgiving, I had read on Facebook 2 days before that a friend lost her child unexpectedly. And I was like, okay, here we go. This was rough. It was her only child. And it was out of the blue. And I was like, that's just like my parents. So I'll just offer her just some short words, small words, just some type of support. And then on Thanksgiving, I lost a loved one. And I was like, so yeah, so it's just been grief after grief, but I'm like, I'm not going to give up. This year is going to be great. I'm not giving up, staying hopeful. And so this is what led to the topic, everyone. I
Mhm.
really shortened the story, but this is where Twee, being a friend, said, "Hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about grief and unpacking grief." And I was like, okay, but I do need to talk about it because I actually been holding on to it. And when people was like, "Hey, have you processed it?" Even when I went to the doctors, "Have you processed it?" "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm processing it." But was I? Not really. Not really. It sat right here. I had to wait until the right time, where I thought was the right time. But I'm like, you need to talk about it.
Can I say something?
Yes, you can.
You are processing it.
Thank you, Twee.
The reason why I say that is part of processing grief and loss. Part of it, if you remember the five stage of grief, is
Yes.
denial is the first one.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if we talk about technically speaking, you
Yes.
are in your journey of grief. And grief is just like that, right? Grief is just like the way you describe it to me, that someday you will feel numbs and you will not feel a single thing and you can focus on thing and you don't want to feel any feelings. And
Yes.
someday you will hit that wave of depressions of, oh my God, I need to isolate myself. I don't want to feel anything but my depression and sadness coming on. And
Yes.
some other day, you can actually get up, function well, talking to other people, and then suddenly you feel sad all over again.
Yes. Thank
That
you.
was grief.
Thank you.
That
Yeah,
was grief.
because thank you so much. Because I was at a place of like, I haven't even started yet. Like again, there I'm trying to box this process,
Mhm.
and when you shared that, I was like, she's right. Twee's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And I
So,
think and I'm sorry cutting you off, but
no,
but
you're
I
okay.
talk to so many clients, and I really mean that, is that when they talk about grief, they expecting a structure, they
Yes.
expecting a very, like, in this one it's gonna be like this, and like couple months down the line it's gonna be like this, and then maybe a year from now it's gonna be like this, which I can tell you right now, after five years that I'm doing this, there are no patterns of a right directions of what is grief look like. Because everyone grieves so differently, culturally differently, emotionally differently, and cognitively definitely differently. So, how one person processing grief might be different because of that. And it just like there's no wrong answer. And I think that we tend to find or try to justify what is the wrong answer with grief, which is not true.
Hmm.
There's no wrong answer with grief at all when it comes to that.
Wow, thank you. Yes, I needed that. Somebody else I know needed that. Yeah, we getting ready to get started. Look, grab your cups, probably grab a pitcher because the information we're going to actually share on grief is going to be a lot. We are preparing, even if this is an extended show, we believe that grief is something that needs to be unpacked.
Hmm.
Unpacked.
Hmm.
So, and I want you to be able to listen to this and unpack. As you see, as we go through this, we're going to talk a lot about grief and how grief shows up and how grief impacts mental health. But Twee, so for us to get started, could you just give us a definition of grief?
Hmm. So to me, grief have two parts, and that's why it's called loss and grief, right? It's not just
Yes.
grief; it's the loss that creating your grief after. So let's talk about loss, the definitions, and we're not gonna go detail after we talk about it, right? So loss is the moment when something or someone is no longer present,
Hmm.
right? That's loss because it's in the moment and that event did happen. Then after that, you go to grief stage, where it's an ongoing emotions for you to processing that loss. And we can talk about, I'm sure we're going to go into the five stages of grief for sure,
Yes.
right? But it's an ongoing set of emotion of denial, anger, frustrating, bargaining, guilt, shames, you name it, it's all there. And that is grief for you, prolong it. And sometimes it's also remember good moments, happening with that deceased person, or good moment when you have that, event happening, right? So it's a ongoing emotion process.
Yes, it is. Definitely. And we'll go ahead and get the other definition out of the way, Twee. So, the definition of mental health.
Hmm. And I think I repeatedly say this, and this is even more so than before when it coming to we talk about it's breaking into three, right? When it coming to
Yes.
mental health, it's always that three as a whole body experiences. It's cognitively, emotionally, and physically, right?
Yes.
All three of that combine to make your mental health it's present. One trigger the other, or one coexisting with the other two. So when we talk about one, the other will affect, especially when it coming to grief. Your emotionally will be that skyrocketing that I described as a wave. Your physical body might affect in fatigues, exhaustions, draining, tiredness, and you go to that hyperarousal to the other ends of stages, right? And then cognitively, sometimes you are racing thought, but then the other time you might have so many blankness in your eye and your mind, and you don't even know where to start.
Right.
So all three of those affect how you're doing in your mental health as a whole.
Okay. Everybody, see, we're getting ready to get started. I like to get those definitions in so you can understand where we're coming from. So, we talked about grief, we talked about loss, and why I like when Twee talks about mental health is because it does impact the whole person. It does impact us, our cognitive. And of course, we know grief makes us feel a certain way, but just to understand that it affects the whole person, it affects you. It
Mhm.
probably affects the way you respond to people, communicate to people. It impacts you everywhere in your body. So
100%.
so Twee shared earlier, or you even shared this, that when people hear the word grief, they automatically think of death. Death, that's not wrong at all, right? But that's where we go. We hear grief, we think death. But grief is actually present in other areas too, besides death. So, can you share some of the situations other than death that can actually cause grief?
Yeah, there's so many different one, and I'm gonna name a few, right? So it could be a divorce, it could be losing a job, it could be also mean you lose a very good relationship with someone by breaking up with them. It's also could be your own health. Sometimes your health declined, and you're really grieving the fact that you are healthy at one point of your life. It could be also the decision that you making when you were younger, and now as older you reflected back, and that's you're like, oh my goodness, what happened there? And you grieve for the loss again back then of what happened, and you grieving that. So grief can be in so many different ways, and I don't think people realize they are actually grieving sometimes until you say, are you sure that's not grief? And then I'm like, what do you mean it's grief? And then I was like, yeah, the fact that you no longer having that, whatever that is. It could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be, anything. But you
Yes.
no longer having that. And sometimes people surprise me, it's like, oh, you're right. It is grief. And I was like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy, right? It's just that.
That is so true because even me having this upcoming medical procedure, I started playing tennis. Definitely
Mm,
not Venus or Serena, not even close. But I
mm,
would get out there. It built that sense of community. I was able to make friends. I'm getting in my exercise while chasing
yeah.
that ball where it goes all over the place. So I started out gung ho like last year, picking that up. And then after I started to experience the loss of my parents, then I started playing tennis again. It would just help. It was really helping. And then I started having problems with my knee. And
Mhm.
so the conclusion came after everything that they tried that I was going to have a medical procedure. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it did turn into like that grief. I'm like, I'm at a place where I'm doing something that I like and I'm happy, kind
Yeah.
of getting through how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
When I have those down days, I can just get out there and go play, be amongst that community that I made. But now I'm having to slow down. I can't go as much. I'm experiencing pain. Before this pain, I was able to run all over the courts, run, jump, twist, or whatever I needed to do. But now I can't. And, I'm having to stop. I gradually stopped, of course, because I'm getting ready to have the medical procedure. And it's going to take like months for me to get back out there again. But I did have that sense of, oh,
Yeah.
and I did grieve.
Yes. And
Hmm.
that go with health, that's go with age, that's go with events. Like you name it. It's there. It's present. It's very present. It just and here we go. We go back to the idea that grief is very hard to deal with.
Yes.
Nobody want to talk about grief.
No,
No one want to deal with grief.
no.
And no
I
one know
did it.
how to respond to grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I might be wrong, and you can tell me this. In this sense, is that sometimes it's because of the hopelessness and the helplessness of how much we cannot do when it coming to death. And
Yes.
I really don't mean that when it coming to just again humans, right? Just people, but really go to animal, go to job, go to everything else. It's just the death of something. It's so hard to even say it, stay with it, respond with it, or even
Yes.
feeling it.
Yes. I like what you said about the helplessness and hopelessness because it does come down to that. Even with my parents, if I had come down earlier, my dad probably could have got help earlier, even though it was just 2 days later. With my mom, maybe I just should have mom napped her and took her with me. You go
Yeah,
through that.
yeah.
With my knee, I'm like, especially with helpless and hopeless, I'm like, the one strategy I'm like that I enjoy to do to help me process my parents and everything else I was dealing with, now that's gone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And funny that you say that because again, we talk about five stages of grief, right? Which is
Yes.
denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The whole
Yes.
entire time when I work with grief clients, bargaining is the hardest of the hardest when the person keep asking and go back, what if? What if this
Yes.
happened? What could I do
Yes.
better? I should have done something else. I need to do this. What if I can redo it again? And that bargaining state is the stage that I felt most of people get stuck
Yep.
for a long while because there are no solution. There are again, it make you feel that hopeless and helplessness that you was talking about a lot. It just like a stuck stage, right?
Yes.
That often we go into because part of us want to resolving it,
Mm-hmm.
but the other
Yes.
part have a lot of questions, and it coming with shames and guilt.
It does. It does, which
It
complicates it.
tied very hands in hand together of hopeless and helpless, go to bargaining state. Shame and guilt came out and say, you, how dare you? How would you? You're guilty of, and this is what happened. You could have, should have, and you name it. It's
Yes.
in that. And it's a cycle of that too as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, while we're talking about the stages of grief, I think we should break it down because I know there may be people that don't realize that there are different stages. We do know sadness comes with it, y'all. That's a given, and that's with anything, but there's different ways that grief actually does show up, like Twee was actually sharing. I even noticed that with my own grief that I've experienced in 2025. But even before 2025 or whenever you have some loss, it may not be as major, but then it's still some type of loss that actually produce different emotions. So, Twee, I want us to get started. You mentioned these, and let's break them down for everybody and just let's give some input and dialogue. So, the first stage is denial. And
Oh,
that I'm going
this
to
is
give you this definition and we're going to talk about it. So with denial, it says it's a defense mechanism that helps buffer the initial shock of loss. People may struggle to accept the reality of what has happened, often feeling numb or in disbelief.
Mm,
Denial,
denial.
first
Ooh,
stage. People
I,
do get stuck right
right.
in that stage because it's like, this has happened.
Right. But I think there I'm so sorry, but there is a state before that. It's called shock, right?
Okay, let's talk about that.
So let's do shock first.
Okay,
It's shock is the first react when you receiving the news or have the realizations of grief. It's loss is happening. So it's not grief yet, it's loss. So that
okay.
is the initial reactions of you immediately react to it. And most of the time, shock happen in a moment. So it could be the fact that you go straight to your body, go to that frozen stage quite often, right? You're just like, what? Right? Just the shock of that and the disbelief of that. Not so much in denial, but it's so much of that initial of like, I could not believe that this did happen,
Yes,
right?
yes. Or
Then
this
after,
is happening.
right. As it's
Yes.
happening, you go into that shock state and say, this is not happening. Shock. Then we go to that denial, which is, I agree with that definitions a lot about the defense mechanism for that initial shock that we're talking about, right? It's going there that maybe you did recognize, okay, there's something is there, but you're rejecting it, right? So there are some some recognitions of, oh, that no longer there. So now you go into that grief state, right? It's not lost anymore. You go to the grief state. But out of this point, you're like, no, it's not true,
Yes.
right? It's not that it did not happen, it did happen. You go through the initial shock, then you go to, oh no, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
That can't be true. I am say it's a no out of this point, right?
Yes. Even though
And
you're looking at it
yes,
and
yeah,
see
you're
it.
looking at it and you seeing it, you happening in it, right? Or that got removed from your life, and you're over here in this stage and say, it will come back.
Mm-hmm.
It automatically come back. Somehow it gonna show up. Somehow that someone gonna show up. Somehow I can rescuing this, and none of this happening,
Yes.
right? Hmm.
Yeah. That is huge. I don't want to get too deep with this, but in the denial stage, even thinking about my own experience, like you said, after the shock, then the denial, there was a piece where I'm sitting there facing the event, like head on,
Hmm.
facing it.
Hmm.
And then I feel like I'm having this, I'm going to describe it in a different way. Of course, we call it disassociative, but
Yeah,
I felt like I was
visualization.
like floating, trying to get away from that situation. It was a split second, like, no, 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 let me get away from this because
Yeah.
this isn't happening.
Yes. And often, like I say, when you're in denial, a lot of things happening is that your body automatically shut down to defend your heartbreaking, your deep vulnerable stage. So the first thing it usually do is it's help you keep that gate by shutting it down, right?
Yes.
Physically. That usually happen that when you initial something very dramatic, any type of dramatic, I traumatize, and I really mean that in any type of way, your body know how to shut down because it's system in a sense to protecting you when it come into the event that you cannot handle. And that is the one of the biggest wave that I always see in people, that people start to froze or shut down, is because your body tried to helping you to get to that by numbing you, by dissociate you, by not feeling any emotion, that numbness that you can describe at some point, so then you don't have to deal.
Yes.
So it's a protect mechanism. It's a protective part coming in and say, I know you can't do it. It's okay. Close your eye and your ear and your heart right now, and just stay there and don't go anywhere.
Can I ask you this along with that? So it is a protective mechanism. So do you think at that point, now this is a question off script, can it be a good thing that your body kind of shuts down for that moment?
It's always a good thing. And I think that people viewing it it's not a good thing because there's nothing that they can do about it.
Right.
And I think it feel out of control when your body automatically doing that. But keep it in mind that it is a good thing because your body organically naturally doing that. It know how to do that for you. Now it involunteering your cognitive and say you're not dealing, right?
Hmm.
It involuntary that, but that doesn't mean it's not a good thing. I never, and this is from IFS standpoint, internal family system point, is that there are no part of you are bad. There are no part showing up in your life in the way you respond and you react are bad part. Now what they did, the parts and the activation happen might not be the most ideal thing that you could have done,
Right.
but there's a reason why it's showing up the way it's showing up to protect you the way it know how.
Thank you for explaining that because I do want people to understand that that shutdown can be a protective mechanism
Yes.
because if the body didn't shut down, and this is being extreme, but this is true, if it didn't shut down and you experienced something like whatever that loss was that caused that shock, just think if our body didn't shut down, I mean, we could run, we could do something that puts us in harm way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why the automatic response of fight, flight, freeze, and then of course we talk about frozen and fate, right? So
Yes,
all that are organic response that your body naturally put out the way it's naturally know how.
yes,
And you can definitely retraining on it, but it's gonna take time for your body to relearn and retrain in a different way,
yes.
right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
So then our next stage is anger. And people probably like, what? Anger, grief is sadness. We're missing that loved one. We're missing that relationship. We're missing that favorite pastime. Let me go through the definition of anger. Once the reality of loss sets in, anger can surface. This may be directed at oneself, others, or even the situation itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a natural part of processing grief, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anger, Twee.
Yeah. And I know it's very weird to even say this, but I love anger so much.
Oh,
Anger is the part in you that take the most actions. It take on all the other deep emotion that you can't access, and anger show up in the sense, let me change this. Let me go in and fixing this by whatever I'm doing. And anger usually is not just that. Sometimes it's all action. It's all the adrenaline pump into your brain, and it have a desire of changing.
mm,
But most often people don't like anger because anger come out and lash out. And it's not contained and it hurt people. Think of it a firefighter. And I know this is weird to even like anger is like a firefighter. Anger
okay.
coming in at a firefighter, its only mission is to rescue whatever inside of that and took it out. The rest it could destroy. The firefighter will go in, do whatever it take and need whatever it take to destroy everything else and protecting the person inside that house. It can destroy a building. It could, like they can go in and break everything down to just get that person out. Correct?
Yes,
Anger is just like that. Anger coming in to do whatever it take to protecting that person or someone or something to hurting again, or wounded part hurting all over again. Anger come out to say there's no other solutions other than me doing this right now, right here in front of me. And in a way, when anger show up and you're like, Tweet, I see red. Whoa, it makes sense. Because your body pump that adrenaline up and say, this is the time to destroy, to protect whatever I needed to do to make sure that I don't get hurt again.
that is deep. But I like that. I like how you describe that anger. And what was interesting when I was reading that definition, when you could be upset at yourself. I like what you said earlier about the coulda, woulda, shoulda's, and how about this? Why didn't I do this? I could have done this. So you could be really angry about the way you handled the situation, or you could be mad at others. So and so should have done more.
Yes.
Why didn't they show up?
Yeah. And I think that show up in behavior, right?
Yes.
Anger show up in emotions, but anger show up as a behavior though. So in that moment when you say I could have, should have, would have, what are you doing to yourself,
Yes.
right? Chances of you beating yourself up, shaming yourself, guilting yourself, punishing yourself, penalize yourself. You stop eating, you stop resting, you ignore yourself, you don't deserve things, so you move yourself from the thing. All of that anger show up to do the actions part of it. The feeling is there, but the actions of that behavior is very, sometimes it's subtle enough that you don't realize that you're doing it.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. And then the last part with anger, or even at the situation itself, I'm bringing this up purposely for a reason. I'm just going to use the example of when a loved one passes away. People do not understand that they can get upset that that loved one passed away. They're
Mhm.
like, why am I mad about that? I am mad because they left me.
Yes, yes.
That is like a normal reaction, but some people feel
Uh-huh.
bad because they're mad at someone for passing away.
Mhm, mhm. And we go to the original feeling that you mentioned before is hopeless and helplessness, right? Anger try to show up to protecting those part right now because they don't, the anger doesn't know how to deal with this. And sometimes anger show up in that sense because there's no other way to explaining this other than putting that on that part and say, why did you choose to leave me?
Yes.
Right? And again, anger, find a reason for you to move, find an action for you to protect and justify for whatever deeper inside of the fact of maybe the fact that they actually did leave me.
That's
And
true.
they make it move. They make it move for the moment of that to happen. Because if guess what happened if you don't move? Your body's shutting down again.
Yes.
You will go to a deeper stage of depression, which is one of our stage in terms of grief. But that actually putting that anger as in the front to help whatever underline that. Keep that in mind. Anger is, I know some people say anger it can be a primary, and I agree with that. Anger can definitely be a primary, but often more than not, anger is always a secondary. That means anger here, there's another emotion in the back of it. Say, I need protect, anger come out, rescuing, protecting it, and slap it right in front of it and do the behavior and emotion.
Using my dad as an example, I mean, my mom too, but just using my dad because he passed away first. I was mad. I kind of giggle about it because I was like mad at him. I'm like, you wasn't supposed to pass away. Like
Yeah,
you're supposed to be here as long as I'm here.
yeah,
Like I didn't ask for you to go ahead and make this decision. And then with
yes.
my mom, even though I kind of giggle about it, everybody, I'm not happy, but it's a part like, and so you decided to leave too. I gave
Mm,
you the choice, but you was like,
mhm,
you know what? Forget this. I'm gone.
yeah. And here we go again, right? I'm not gonna poke too much into it, but we're talking about it at a second deeper sense of they did left me and I'm alone now.
Yes.
And that's what anger come up front to say, you did this,
Hmm.
then I'm over here, what am I doing, right?
Yes.
And here we go. First, anger of the fact that they did leave you, they choose to leave you. And then the other part of, and I'm alone and I'm hurt right now as I'm thinking about you leaving me.
Yeah. So anger is definitely a part, everyone, of this process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes it's manageable. We'll talk a little bit about this later. And sometimes it's not, which
Yeah,
is where you probably have to go see someone. But just know it's a natural part
natural.
of processing grief.
Agree. Agree. 100%.
You mentioned a little bit about this earlier about bargaining, but we're going to revisit it since we're going through the cycle.
Yeah.
And the definition that I have is in this stage, people may dwell on the what ifs or if only statements, hoping to negotiate away the pain, which I
Mhm.
find that to be an interesting sentence because we do hope to negotiate the pain. And it says it reflects a desire to regain control and undo the loss.
Mhm.
Bargaining. You said people get stuck in this stage.
Oh, so much. So much. The scenario, the event, the people. Like I could not tell you how many times I hear, what if I could, oh, if only if I could do this, if I can move quicker, if I can just your example, right? If I could come even 2 days earlier than that, if I could know this information, if yeah, people stuck
Hmm.
in it. And it doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't go away at
It's
all.
going away.
Yeah, there's people that I've actually worked with in counseling, like if they lost a loved one or, and they could have had job loss or whatever, but if they lost a loved one, if there was, their birthday was coming up, for an example, or some other celebration,
Mhm.
or if somebody wanted to invite them out to lunch, they literally stop living. I'm just going to use that to where they won't celebrate.
Mhm.
They won't go to lunch with anyone.
Mhm.
The way they feel they have to honor that person that they lost is by sitting and not having any fun.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, and again, we go back to anger a little bit more. I have a sense it's more of an anger. But it's interesting with bargaining stage, and I don't know why I feel this, but I feel like it's a part of you that is hoping that you have a second chance. And in a way, it's not a negative thing to get that hope into I wish I could do it again, right? It's like a double-edged sword on this one particularly. There are definitely certain things that you will have a second chance to do when it coming to grief, right? And there are definitely things and events and situation that you cannot have that second chance. Part
Yeah.
of it is one to help with the hope that you can do better, you can do more, you know that you can, or maybe it's the fact of you feel like you have the capability of do more but you didn't do all of it, right? And that our system, honest system, checking with ourselves and say, am I doing the best that I could? And bargaining come out just like that. Am I doing the great job as I doing? And the answer is always yes. Yes, you did. Because if you could have known, I know you will do something different.
Yes,
If you can have
exactly.
more, if you have more information, I know you will react and respond accordingly to what you know, right?
Right.
So I always tell my clients in terms of there are things that you know, there are things that you don't know. There are things that you know that you don't know, and there are things that you don't know that you don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
So right now you in the stage in bargaining that you don't know what you don't know, but you wish you know what you don't know.
Yes, bargaining.
Bargaining.
Even the way you just described it there, I mean, it is so on point, but right there, it shows where it's that room for negotiation.
Yeah.
Right there, because you do want to know. And one thing about grief, loss, all of that, it is unexpected. I don't care if you knew it was going to happen on this day at this time. You do not know how you're going to feel. You do not know all of this. It will still impact.
Yeah. You can do all, and I think this is one of the things that I feel like people have a misunderstand when it coming to preparing death. like you expecting the death happening, or you expecting it falling out. And I feel like I don't think you ever can preparing for death, particularly, or loss of an event or someone or something, and know how it feel until you go through it.
Yes.
Like you cannot, and you can like mentally, emotionally, physically. Now the only thing that I heard that is a little bit different when I work with Greek client is that when it coming to chronic illness,
Mhm.
the family who take care of the person have an extensive witnessing of preparations, go through that with them, witnessing them and everything, that is put a whole different level of witnessing this happening. And sometimes it's a weird mix of, yes, I don't know how to handling it, and the sense of relief happening at the same time. And it's interesting when that happened, because then shames and guilt go back in and say you should not feel relief. You should, how dare you even go in and think of it as a relief when you are over here. And again, going back to bargaining, right? Stay there, loop it back in.
You brought up a good point about relief. I mean, let's talk about that just for a second, because people do feel guilty when they feel that relief. There was somebody I know that lost a loved one years ago. And everyone was just, oh, they was in tears, they were crying, they were sad, they were giving them hugs.
Yeah.
That person was like, hey, don't feel sorry for me. That person that passed away lived a good life, but I am relieved because now I can live my life. And people were really upset that that person said that. But
Hmm.
when they said that, I got it. Especially when people have like that extensive illness, like you were saying, and they had to deal with that as a caregiver. I
Hmm.
mean, they're there day in, day out. They're not off. They don't punch in and punch
They
out like
never,
we do.
they never off. Hmm.
No.
Hmm.
And so you got to be there. And they're dealing with that loved one's
Hmm.
emotions,
Hmm.
because that loved one, even though they may be declining, they're also going through their own grief process
Absolutely.
at the same time.
Yeah.
So the caregiver is catching all those emotions and those
Hmm.
behaviors I mean, on a daily basis. It doesn't turn off. You go
Right.
from someone lashing out at you to where they're in tears the next moment, and you're
Exactly.
having to navigate, take care of them nonstop, manage your own emotions as much as you can, because
Yeah.
it's hard when you're on the go and dealing with them. So when that person passes away, there is a relief, y'all. Give people a break. They're not saying, yay, I'm so glad that they're gone. Yay, I can live my life. They're not saying that. They can breathe.
Yes. Or it's less difficult to breathe.
Yes.
And
Yes,
I think that is something that get again frowned upon. And
it
I gotta
does.
say, I know we're supposed to go through this, but I gotta say, since we on point on that, there is an expectation of how we show up for grief,
Yes.
and I'm annoying at that. I'm very frustrating when someone and I know they try to be very helpful. And I don't say, and I'm not frowned upon on that at all, because they're doing their hardest and their best to support however that makes sense for them. But there are some comments, I swear, I will be like, what are you thinking when you're saying it? So people coming in, grief happening, and I'm going to give you a small example of a funny one, and definitely not a funny one.
Okay.
Let's say a breakup happening. You go through grief and loss. Your friends show up and say, there's plenty of other fish in the sea.
Yes.
Don't worry, you find a new one very soon. Again, for them, supportive. For you, sometimes you're like, I'm like crying and so sad and so upset, and I'm grieving the relationship that I have. I don't care how long. And you over here tell me to feel like somehow that will make me feel better.
Yes.
And a not funny one is when a death showing up in the door, and the person will say something, and again, very gentle in a different way, but again, depend on the person, culture, and religions. That statement can be really hurtful or not, like harmful. He in a better place now. You don't have to
Yeah. Oh my
worry
gosh. Yes.
about him. I'm so sorry for the loss. Even with that statement alone. Or, oh my God, what happened? Right? And again, we have this expectations when it comes to grief and loss. We have to show up very strongly and show up and have to ask every question, have to hands on, have to go in, try to make the person who go through grief feel better. But I'm gonna ask you guys to just pause and observe them first.
Please.
Pause
Please.
before you go in and rescuing their emotion, before you go in and try to make them feel better, before you go in and say, don't worry, I handle all of this for you. Pause and observe. From there, talk. If they say something heavy and you don't know what to say, honest that. Don't try and make it feel better, because I can tell you, after 5 years I'm dealing with grief and talking to clients who work with grief, nothing that I say will make my client feel better. Nothing. I can try to say all the good, positive thing on earth in that moment, and they won't feel a single better. It's because they go through their own grief. And I have to honor that by saying, yeah, this suck, and you won't feel better right now. And I have to honor that.
I agree. I agree. Pause. Observe. Listen, please. Listen.
Listen.
Listen. People do come from a good place. And I'm so glad that Twee actually shared that, because we're not saying that you're not a good person and that you're doing stuff wrong. We're just
No.
saying to pause,
Right.
please, because some of the things we think we should say, we think when we respond in silence or we don't have anything to say, we try to throw some things out and it could have that adverse effect. I'm so glad that you said they're in a better place, because they know. Hashtag they know.
Oh, I,
But that doesn't help,
it
you
doesn't
know?
help. No, and that's why I say I'm so frustrating.
Yes.
I just like, what? Like what? And the other thing that I really frustrating sometimes when I hear it, oh, you should move on. Who are you to tell me to move on?
Right.
Yes, I'm suffer, I'm going through, I am feelings of feelings that I have, but that does not mean that it's unhealthy. Now, if I stop eating, not going through, get everything stopped and froze and, stuck in one spot and go deeper into that depression and I could not move, okay, we can talk about that. But if I can move, I can eat more in one day, I cannot eat the other, but sometimes I can show up, I can function. That's mean I'm working on moving. Can we say, I can see you moving, keep going?
That's
Instead
it.
of say, instead of saying, yeah, you need to move on. No, 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 no. Nobody have the right to say that to a person who grieving.
No,
No
no,
one. No one should have the right to say that.
no. I agree. I 100% agree. It's true. Like it's hard. You don't know their process. It's easy for us to say. I know when you mention about acute grief, like right after it happens, when people reach out and they say, "Hey, are you okay?"
and we know the answer. You know what I
We
mean? Like,
know the
well,
answer. You
I
know the
was
answer
like,
is no or yes. It could be no or yes,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you know an
yeah,
event happened. And
yes,
then if they answer yes, don't ask them again.
no.
Please. Unless, like Twee said, unless you notice your loved one's not eating, not sleeping, and you just see that their daily living activities are declining, then you may want to just go a little bit deeper. And it's been a little time. It's been some time
Even
also.
24-hour check, right? Just
Yes.
that 24-hour check of, hey, I noticed you didn't sleep, you didn't eat. Can you eat something? Can you sleep something? And it's not a bugging of 30 minutes for text and phone call.
Yes. Exactly.
Uh, Just that, like, I'm aware, let them know that you're here. When they're ready, they will come to you.
They
And
will.
now I know this is a horrible metaphor, but think of them as a cat right now. They are a cat. They are one of those
Yes.
shy cat, a cat that will not come out even if they are
Mm-hmm.
hungry because they
Yes.
don't want to see you.
Yes.
And they only show up when nobody around and get everything and come out and whenever. And it happened even if you're there or you're not there, they will come out in a way that they can.
They will. I'm here. You can just, I'm here.
I'm here.
Need something.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. Friendly reminder once a day. But don't bombard them once a day. That's it. Don't go extensively 24,000 texts within, I'm exaggerating it, of course, but Jesus Christ. That's that's a lot.
Ye- Yeah, we just had to bring that up because it is true. And that is some of the things that we think we're supposed to say and we're supposed to do. But really,
Yeah,
it doesn't help that person. It doesn't.
no. No, it doesn't. And this is one of the things between empathy and sympathy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We don't want it's not like we don't want sympathy, but we encouraging empathy, right? We're encouraging empathy of saying, hey, I'm there with you,
Mm-hmm.
and just stay there. Don't make too much movement. Sometimes saying less actually helping than saying more.
Yes.
And this is one of the events that I'm encouraging y'all to sometimes say less than say more.
Exactly.
Unless that person is a person who process by talking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they process emotion, and you know them, that's how they process emotion when it coming to it. Then you welcome to offer all that wonderful just that you just say and talk with them and do all that. But if a person who not a talker to process, right? Then you have to go to the opposite end and meet them where they at, not where you at.
Agreed. Glad that you brought that up. Really glad that you brought that up. Thank you for chiming in with that. So, the next stage of grief is depression, and that's after bargaining.
Oh.
So that's sadness, withdrawals, and feelings of emptiness often emerge at this stage. This stage acknowledges the depth of the loss and its impact on daily life.
This is the more weighted stage
Yes.
because this is where I felt like when client go through it and I go through it myself, I don't know what to do with it. And you have every right to say, I don't know what to do with it and own it and say that.
Can I share with what you just said? Like, I don't know what to do with it. I think another reason, besides the emotions and the feelings of emptiness that can happen in a depression cycle, I think people often stay in this stage or probably stay stuck in this stage because they're trying to figure out what to do with it instead of realizing that they're processing it. So it's okay. I like when you said that because I tell clients that too. I've shared with friends, like, it's okay to say that you don't know what to do with it. You experienced something huge. You're not supposed to know what to do with it. Like, you didn't have a
There are no
heads up.
there's no textbook or rules or post to say, oh, this is how you do with depressions when it comes to grief, and here's the follow step that's gonna guarantee you to step it. None of that. None of that.
Yes.
And I think one of the thing is that when it comes into depression state, people often trying to get out from that stage. Instead of feeling it, they will go opposite from that and say, I don't like this, I don't want it. But one of the things that I know, and I work for this for a while now, to know that the more you resisting the emotions, the more you rejecting the emotion, the more it penalizes in your body.
It's a battle, y'all.
Whatever resist is persist. Like it just stay.
Yes, it is a battle, like within that stage, just like you were saying, because now you're dealing with the helplessness, the hopelessness, and the shame and guilt. You can pull that back up here, and you're fighting with
Right,
everything
right.
instead of just saying, it's a sad day. This
Yes,
day sucks. I miss that person, whether they're still here with us or not. Just acknowledging that piece in that stage. Does it
yes.
make you feel better? No, there's
No.
no guarantee. We're just going to throw that out. But you're not going to stay stuck. And you're learning to say, it's okay that I'm sad.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay.
I
I
mean, you
don't
have
know.
every now is a better time than any other time that you say it's so sad. This is one of the bigger one that you can say, yeah, it makes sense that I'm sad,
Yes.
right? But again, it's go back to that self rescue.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about earlier about other people trying to rescue your emotion. This stage is when you self rescuing, sometimes, right? When you are self rescuing yourself to not feel the feeling that you're supposed to feel, organic feeling, because you don't want to feel it. That means what? It's leading to the next step, which is acceptance. If I feeling this and I feel better, and I know it's very contradicting to even say this, but it's true. If I feel and move forward with processing, that mean that person is gone and I no longer can have that person in my life and I have to move on with things. So I rather stay in here, get it stuck, not feel good, knowing that that person can still be here in my mind and I will never forget about them. And I work with a lot of clients who very fearful of if they process all the heavy emotions and memories and whatnot, they will forget about the deceased person. That's mean I'm moving on. That mean I will not think or feel or forget that person face, voice. That's mean I can't remember everything so vividly anymore. And only when I stuck in the grief state, that's when I remember the most. And depression do a really good job with that.
Wow. Can we normalize right now, Twee and the listeners, that statement of moving on doesn't mean you're moving away and you're leaving that loved one. You're moving on with them, with them in your
Hmm.
heart, in your mind. You will not forget them.
Yes, yes. And I think this is one of the things that me and Kimberlyn was like talking before we go into this podcast is that how to bond, right?
Yes.
Having a healthy bond relationship with the disease after that event happened. It's helpful. Usually we only think of the physical bonding,
Yes.
right? Usually that's the way that we do when it happened. We don't know how to bond with them and because they no longer here when it comes into that. And that's where it gets stuck and is go to depression state sometimes
Mm-hmm.
or most of the time. But I'm gonna invite to for us to do and think of all the ways that we can bond.
Yes.
Like you say, moving with, right? Not forward without them. It's with them in mind as you're doing it. Spiritually, how would you like to do that? And I'm not going to give you solutions for that. You have to think hard and work hard on that one. Sorry, guys. Emotionally, what would you like to do? How to move with them as you keep them in mind and move with them with that in mind, right? So some of the thing that is really interesting that it could be, again, double-edged source when it coming to this, is that I recommend people to do a lot of emotional moving pieces by writing a letter, by doing activities that they fond of, by do some of the daily thing with that person that's still as persistent, right? For example, you guys have a traditions of going here in this day, and this is always something that you do. Maybe consider keeping those instead of avoiding them, because again, we're moving with them.
Yes.
Same with, I have client I ask about planting a tree and name that tree honor by whoever that is, or do an activities that they and you do, or they do very well and you're the one who honoring that. And again, the idea is you can continue doing that as you moving forward with them in mind, and in body or spiritually, you name it, it is going to be there. Now, I'm not going to speak about the religion perspective because I'm not a religious person, but I believe in spiritual. um and I believe that they are there somewhere, always watching us, and always protecting us in a whole different way. They're always present with me in a certain situation, and sometimes I do that through pictures, memory, emotions, even driving. Sometimes when I hear a song, I'm like, oh, that's my dad. And that's just the way it's connecting me to believe and trusting that process, that they are still present with me, but not in a physical form.
Yes. Yes. I like that.
Thoughts about that or anything, Kimberlon?
Oh my God. I really like what you said. I have actually been stuck on because it's helping me with the moving, instead of saying moving on, moving with them. And I was also thinking, because I was like debating, do I share this or not? When I came back from the other state, so with my mom, I cremated my mom. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, so I was getting ready to bring her back with me.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually drove this time, which was very interesting. It was a 14-hour drive. And so when I was on my way back, I was like, oh my God, I forgot my mama. Sorry, I can laugh. I have my humor, it comes up in different ways. And I said, I forgot my mom. And I was like, oh my God, that was my whole purpose. But when you said about that moving, with,
With
even though I shouldn't say forgot her. I mean, remembered, that she's in the other state, but she's still with me. She is still with me. So I was like pondering on that when you shared that, because I'm like, she's still with me. I did forget her though, but I just forgot the physical
sense of
memory of
her,
her.
yeah, yeah, for sure, yeah. And that's what I think. I think we often forget that. We often
Yes,
forget. We only focusing on what we can see, and I think we
yes.
forgot about anything that we don't see. The other thing, that memory don't change in your mind.
No,
No,
no, not at
memory
all.
memory don't change at all. Even though you try and you can recall it back at all the time, the sensation, your body even remember that without the memory from your brain to tell you, your body remember it. Can we trust that? If you don't trust anything else, or not even spiritually, can we trust that your body and your mind can still remember? If even if you don't trust your cognitive, your body still remember. And when you bring up that, so many things will going on, and you will feel it, you can send it, you will think about it, and years down the line, it will never be fading.
No, it will not. So that was so spot on. That's what I was just thinking about when you said moving with. I'm like, still moving with you, mom.
Yeah,
Thinking
friendly
about,
reminder, friendly
yes.
reminder. Yeah. Hmm.
and and I know you touched on this. The last stage is acceptance. And so acceptance doesn't mean that the grief disappears, as we were sharing. It means finding a way to live with the loss. People begin to adjust, integrate the reality, and move forward with resilience. That's
Yeah.
acceptance. You can get there. I just
Yeah.
have to say, you can get there. Now,
Yes.
when you're back in the shock and denial stages, you may not think, I will ever get there. I will never see that day of acceptance, but you will get there.
Yeah. Can I add two more things into that?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Can we talk about the concept of acceptance?
Yes,
Because I feel like
please.
there's a lots of people misunderstand what is acceptance,
That's true. Yes.
right? And the other thing that each of us will have a different definition of what acceptance is. So I'm
Yes.
not going to justify and say your definition is wrong. Let's just be clear on that. I'm not saying
Right.
that. I'm saying that there's a lot of misconceptions of what acceptance mean. So I want you
Yes.
to check in with yourself and say, what is acceptance mean for me? What does that even mean to say I'm moving on? What does that mean to say letting it go? Because those are vague terms that we just put it on and we don't even have no idea what does that mean in our body nervous system. But I'm going to clarify this. When we talk about acceptance, just like we say, grief doesn't disappear. Acceptance mean, just like we say, moving with, right?
Yes.
It's mean you have the sense of accept it happen. And I saw all the emotions after that, whether it's grief, anger, bargaining, denial, they all coming along with accept. I accepting that grief is happening and I will feel anger, bargaining, depressed, and I accept those as I'm accepting that that person also not here with me.
Hmm.
Accepting does not mean yay. I'm accept now. I'm so happy, and I will feel so relieved, and everything will be good moving forward. That's part of acceptance. That's not everything about acceptance.
So true.
So when we say acceptance, we also accepting all positive and negative feelings when it coming to it. And that not only applying to grief, that's go with anything. When you say you accept, I hope you know that when you say you accept, you're saying that I accept this is the way that it is, and I have all the emotions that it will show up the way it show up, and I'm accepting those two as I'm moving forward with this.
Thank you so much for explaining it because that is true. And I do like to describe the acceptance like that. Like I'm so glad that you said, yay, because that's not what we're saying. Yay, my loved one passed away. We're not saying that. I really like how you put that about just realizing whatever those emotions look like for you, however you need to process, that's how you're going to accept. Another thing I like what you just shared, Tui, is like, you're like, look, it's not for me to tell you what acceptance is. What does it look like for you? Because how it may work for Twee, how it may work for me, may not work for you.
Agree.
So you
Agree.
gotta like figure out what does that look like. Again, we're not saying way, but we're saying how do I need to process this?
Yeah. How
hmm
would I like to do that?
How would I like that?
How would?
Yeah.
And this is weird. Not probably not. But when we talk about all of these stages, that does not equal that's a map that you follow exactly. Oh, when
Yes.
I'm done with denial, I will go to angry. And when I'm done with angry, I'm gonna go to bargaining. And when I'm going to bargaining, I will go to that. That's not what we say.
No.
I just want to clarify that, and I know there's a lot of things going on there, but I want to say this: this is not a stage of anarchy. That means you complete one, the next level will show up. Think of this as a complex circle where you can bounce off on that circle. You can be denial one day, depression a couple weeks down the road, anger will arrive a month from there, then you go back to bargaining again, and then you go back to denial, and then you shock all over again, and at some point you will have a brief moment of acceptance, and then you go back like, no, this is not true, straight back to depressions. So what I'm hoping for you to know is grief is not going away, which is the statement that I said earlier, and it will get smaller and smaller over time. It won't disappear, but it will get like think of this as and there's an analogies that is called pain in a box in grief. I forgot which one, and it talking about the idea of your grief is like a box. There's a pain buttons like on the side of that box. The ball grief is this big in the beginning, and it's gonna bounce and hit the pain button every single time and as consistent and consistent and consistent. As time moving forward, the pain button is still there, right there with you the whole entire time. But the grief ball actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller over time. So it will be less time of that bouncing on that grief box and hit that pain button. The pain button doesn't change. The grief doesn't change. What changing in that is the actual ball of grief for you. Because then you start to
Mm.
learn to adapt. You're learning what is your definition. You're learning about your skill set. You're learning, you name it, it will be there. So I'm hoping that that is something that you can consider as you're listening to this. Again, it might be not fully true for you, but I'm showing a different perspective of what grief should look like.
Thank you so much, because it isn't just a linear process. It isn't step one, step two, step three. No, no. Because just when I thought I was here, if I can relate to a certain stage, like you said, next thing I know, I'm like, how the heck did I get here? Why am I back here? What happened? How did this happen?
Mhm.
We just like to go over the grief cycle so you'll know that you do experience different emotions, different behaviors during this process. And yeah, and just because you like make it to where you think the finish line, like Twee was saying, the acceptance, if you knock back and go all the way back to denial, that doesn't mean that anything's wrong.
Yeah,
It's just
that doesn't
something
mean you
that
don't make
happened.
progress. And I think that's
Yes,
something that we're looking for progress, but I think that going through it is mean you process. So we don't look at progress, we look at the process. So I hope
yes,
I hope that help a little bit when it coming to do I make progress? No, you're looking at processing. And
yes,
in it, that's mean you're processing. How you process, what way you process, what it aligns with that, that's different. Yeah.
yes.
And as we're talking about this, one last thing, and I know I talk a lot more today, but
I love
um,
it.
I want to bring the culture perspective in just a little bit, and I would love Kimberlyn to share her experiences when it comes to culture perspective because I only familiar with mine, and I'm not feeling comfortable to speak for other culture. So I would
Okay.
invite the culture perspective to coming in. I would like to invite the fact that culture perspective of grief, it's different for every culture. Some culture will be more, how would I describing this? They will be more emotional out loud and tolerance for the grief to actually show up and actually be collectively grieving, and big emotions can come up and show up and in a safe way. Some of other culture are not like that. They will be grief individually and actually alone because there's a belief of you should not burden other people with your emotion. You have to take care of other emotions instead of your own. You should not showing the grief because then you are activate someone else's grief out of that point, and that's show as inconsiderate.
Wow.
So this is where I want you to take a look at your own culture perspective. What do you learn from your culture? What do you do? How did you getting into that? Because for mine, we don't speak about grief as much. We grieve that alone, and sometimes we can talk a little bit. But again, talking about it too much, that's mean you the one and other people have to take care of you instead of the other way around. And I always the one who have to take care of other emotions for other people. Then actually I have to hold space for them. I have to be considerate, and that just again my perspective when it comes to my culture that we have very little to none to talk about grief as much as we wanted to. It's a very uncomfortable. Parent don't explain to their kids sometimes what does death mean, especially with younger children. They just say, oh, they move on or they're not here anymore. Again, dealing with all that, or they don't even know how to explain to their kiddos about that, right? And that's, again, you have to figure it out yourself. And a lot of time that's what happened in culture that it's very collectivist in a way that you have to consider of a general feeling of everyone, and then you have to minimize your emotions sometime and put that away.
Hmm.
Same with grief.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I know on our side, for, my culture, again, like you say, even within and within our culture, it can be different, but it's mostly like collective. People, get together, you grieve, everybody offer condolences. Sometimes we have the spiritual piece that's involved where people pray, and like we have the services. I used to think the services go long, but I've heard in other cultures like services can go weeks. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. And so ours, it could go anywhere up to 2 hours, probably up to 4 hours. But what's interesting, what I do like, the plus about most of the funerals that I attend, is that they do honor it. This is a celebration of life. We're
Yeah.
celebrating. Yes, they're gone. Yes, there'll be tears, but we're celebrating because they lived a great life, which is ideal, right? I'm just gonna say that it's super ideal. Here's where I could say it can get really snaggy,
Mm.
because even though it's a celebration, some people may be stuck on the
Yes.
sadness piece,
Yes.
right? And if you hear that, hey, it's a celebration, we should be this way, we're honoring this person's life. If you're sad and you can't seem to get through it, you may be in whatever stage, it may make you feel that shame or that
Mm.
guilt
Mm-hmm.
that can
Mm-hmm.
come from that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're like, well, they said it's a celebration, I should be happy. That person did have a fantastic life, but I feel miserable. I feel sad. I still miss that person. I'm dealing with these type of emotions. I'm dealing with these symptoms. I may be experiencing that withdrawal, that feelings of emptiness. And because I'm feeling that way and I'm hearing that I should be happy because that's where I should be, then I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm
Right.
going to keep the true feelings to myself. So then if
Right.
somebody's like, how are you doing?
Sure.
I'm doing great,
Sure. Sure.
but
And
inside I'm miserable.
I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry to cut in. The concept of celebrations of life, that not a concept for Vietnamese culture. And you're right, like it's not about celebration of life. I felt like it just the grieving itself, on its own, but it's never the celebration of life. They talk about like the life cycle of it and learn how to make peace with it more in my culture than actually like celebrating it at the end of the day. And when it coming to the funerals and the service and everything, that actually depends on the funeral. Sometimes it's like you say, it can be take a whole week to like do, and at least 3 days, some of the day that is showing up, but at least 3 days throughout the time, so all the relative and everyone able to say goodbye. They're hosting a big event for everyone from the neighborhood to everyone, so the culture itself is very different on how that go. And usually we don't speak on, like you say, celebration. We don't do that into the funeral part of it. So again, different culture, different perspective, but what I'm saying is that be aware of that. Learn your loved ones or the one who go through grief, what is their culture, what are
Yes.
actually the way that they need to support or showing support in that moment will be very
Yes.
important.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because really how one may celebrate, like Tweet was sharing, it's really different than my experience. There's no right or wrong way. So there's no right or wrong way. So if you go somewhere, you find yourself in a position to like support someone, and you go and you're like, whoa, wait, this
That's
this may not align to what I think, then just realize that this is how it is observed in that culture, and
mm-hmm,
just honor that process. Don't go
mm-hmm,
in trying to change it, asking people how they're doing. I'm joking, but just just honor that process.
yes. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think that's the last piece that I want to bring into this is that cultural awareness when it comes to grief, it's very important. because once you know on that part, you show up in a way that is more gentler, you show up in a way more understanding, and you definitely show up in a way that you can support the persons. And sometimes nonverbal is unnecessarily, silent is unnecessarily,
Yes.
and more doing probably than talking also unnecessary.
Yes. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that because that's a part too that we needed to discuss when it comes to grief, that it is definitely different in different cultures. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up on the show because we do want to be able to share that it is different. We do want to shed light on that piece. Since we like to express the importance of mental health, we are going to talk a little bit about the mental health piece, everyone. This information is so good. Let me say, look, not because it's my podcast, but really this information is good. And honestly, Twee, I have to say thank you. You're really helping me. Like I'm taking my mental notes over here. It's helping me with processing. So it's definitely sharing light to me. So I know that it's sharing light to our viewers and our listeners. But since we do like to talk about the importance of mental health on Good Tea and Reads, can you share some of the mental health challenges that people may experience when they are grieving?
Mm. And again, we talk about this in break into pieces, right, of different area of you as a whole. So like I mentioned in the very beginning, it break into three, and I'm sure there's more than three, but let's start with the basic three that we're talking about, which is cognitively, emotionally, and physically, as we always do, right? So cognitively, when you're talking about grief, someday, like I say, it might be very fatigues, you have not zero thoughts, you go to blank space, you might go to dissociate, or there's might be days where there's a lot of memories coming up for you, your bargaining stage happening in that moment, and you're like, what if could have, what, and it's just happening in the moments of that. Or the other way, you just start to think about the futures of like what actually going on with that and how you can do differently, what could I do, and it could go on in different stages when it comes to your cognitively speaking. Emotionally, the main one that I see quite often that people have go from hyperarousal to all the way to hyperarousal, and often they are not in their window of tolerance, which is more calm, collected, and all of that thing. They usually go very shut down, isolated, very go into the stage of numbness at some point, or feeling extreme sad, anxiety, depressions, right? And all of that could be within the emotion mixing, and a lot of time guilt, shame, blame,
Mm-hmm.
anger, right? Depressed, showing up in the same emotion, and it can be the roller coaster of emotion, go back and forth between one, and it's bouncing off from each other when it comes to that emotional stage of it. And it could be within the same day or within like couple hour, or like you can suddenly feel like you're laughing at something and suddenly you start to tear up and you're like, what the hell is happening with me? Well,
Yes.
you're going through grief. That's what happened, is that suddenly something else is happening in your body, and physically you will feel a lot of weight. And I mean that in a way of, it could be feeling tightness in the chest more, your body feel really like tied up, like you carry something very heavy, or the opposite end of that, you feel very empty in your body and you feel frozen, shutting down, and you really go to the stage of not moving a lot as well. So it can change throughout the day or even the time that you're actually doing when it coming to grief. And just like I said, just because you cried one time and you laugh at the other time, that means you're not normal. You're absolutely very normal when it comes to grief. And your body trying to push to that normal routine that you're trying to do, right? And everything will feel different is because it is different. Something changing in your mind, your body in a moment. So give yourself a lot of grace in that moment, because your body know what is happening and it's trying to walk you through the steps of what's going on and trying to figure out a way. So confusing might happening also as well when
Yes.
it coming to it. You feel lost sense of direction. You feel the sense of losing control or there's nothing go right. And all of that can be, again, the loss of that is because you're trying to figure out and navigate through something that you never know before. So all of that show up mentally when it coming to dealing with grief, generally speaking, um, as well.
That is so true. I know when I had to deal with my own grief that I encountered throughout the year, I felt like I was all over the place. And I had to just normalize that my emotions are all over the place. And I started kind of laughing about it because, like you said, one minute I'm just happy, next minute I'm like this. And I was like, what is happening? I was like, you're grieving. And I thought, I'm going to have a good day today. And next thing I know, I'm like, "Ugh," and I'm like, oh my gosh. I kind of just normalized it and it helped me like just process it. And how about I went with it?
Hmm.
If I had to cry, you know what? Cry. Because I was like, why? I'm like, oh, no. I said, I'm not going to hold any tears in. Nope. I'm just
Yes.
going to cry it on out.
Yeah.
And then after I cry, I'm like, okay, now I'm up. And then next
Yeah.
thing I know, it could be something funny that happens. And then I'm laughing about it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And I
going with
want
it.
you to say right. And I want to hope, and everyone will know this is that also normalize when you have good moments when you go
Yes.
through the grief, right? Grief is and again the expectation is when I'm in grief, I have to go to despair and I couldn't have anything. I should not do and again, can we trust and allow your body to flow?
Yes.
You can be happy, you can be sad, you can be both. You can be whatever you need in that moment to let that flow. As long, and I have two things that I always say to my client, as long as you're not damaging any relationship with yourself and your family,
Hmm.
everything else is permitted to do.
Yes.
As long as you don't damaging anything toward yourself, harming, killing, hurting yourself and
Hmm.
others, and damaging and do all of that, everything else you do over here is permitted. There are no limits on what you can do over here as long as you don't do that. I call rules, but whatever you want to call it, the expectation of not doing that with other, absolutely you can do whatever over here. You can go angry and you can go to a smash house and just smash a bunch of plate if you wanted to. And to releasing that to do everything, use that energy in a way that is not damaging. I think that is more important of how do you use that energy as that energy coming to you as of that.
I agree. And just along the lines of what you were just sharing, that since people will experience some or all of the symptoms of the grief cycle and some of the other emotions that you said people will experience, and you may feel like, oh, I'm confused, or oh, I'm feeling like I'm floating, or I'm angry, I don't know, everything that I can feel. How will people know when it's time to seek a higher level of care, such as talking to a counselor or another healthcare professional to get help with managing their symptoms related to grief? How will I know what's normal?
Any point throughout your process, you can see a therapist or seeking help. I don't think there are limits of where or when you can help, but what important the most, like I say, I mentioned this to you before, if it's to the point that you're not eating for 3 days, you're not sleeping for 3 days, you isolated yourself and you're shutting down for weeks, and you get yourself in a space, and if you can solidify to process grief on your own, that's one thing. But if it's impact and damaging your body, your health, your emotion on top of other people on that, that's when there's a sign and a signal for that. And other people probably gonna tell you. They're gonna tell you, hey, I know this is gonna happen. That might be a sign to inviting you to reconsider when you're gonna go and asking for help. So I would say throughout the whole, from the very beginning when the loss happening all the way to the grieving process to how long that it needed to be, you have every right in every directions to go in for help. It can be right in the beginning where, oh my god, this is all happening and I really need, or it could be I tried to managing this myself and I couldn't do it, I will need help with someone else. Or it could be someone tell you, hey, I noticing this is happening to you and I have very big concern, can you go see someone? All of that are signed. It just Can you trust yourself to just go and seeking for help?
I'm so glad that you said that you can go at any time. You don't even have to wait until you feel like you can't manage the symptoms, because sometimes when you're going through the process, you may not be able to step back and say, is this normal what I'm feeling, or do I need to see someone? You're going through the process. You won't know. Chances are you will not know. So you see someone just to talk to them, just to process how you're feeling, having that place. And some people may say, well, I can talk to relatives, friends, and loved ones. You can. You
Mhm.
can, as long as they give you that space and you're not met with the, well, you can move on from that. Life goes on. Yeah, it's hard, but just pray and get over it. You may get those responses that will shut you down. That's why we
Hearing that
encourage.
like make me want to take a breath. Like as you're saying that, I was like, ugh, sorry.
Yes, it
There's a protective part of
happens.
me coming out.
Seeking that higher level of care will give you that place to talk to somebody and be able to process how you need to process, and they'll be able to help you identify those strategies. And if you do need extra support, talking to that person will help you get to that place of making
Mm,
those decisions.
yeah, agree. Couldn't agree more.
hmm Remember, there are stigmas out there, and sometimes when we
Right.
talk to our loved ones and our friends, again, they do come from a good place. They do. But there are stigmas surrounding if you need medication for short term or long term. If you need to go speak to someone, they may say, hey, have you tried this? Or do you have enough faith if you're trying to pray? Or, do you have enough faith in what you're saying? So you may be met with that. And sometimes you're praying and you have faith, you're believing, you're doing all of that. But again, grief is so, I'm just going to use the word tricky, that you don't know if you're doing okay. So keep doing what you're doing, the praying and everything else. We're not saying not to do that, but you do whatever you need to that aligns with your cultural. However, I do encourage you to seek a higher level of care if you're doing this and you're like, I don't know if I'm okay. If you're second guessing yourself because you know yourself best, go
Yes,
connect with someone.
agree. 100%. And I think the main thing go back to this is that you're on your journey. You have every right to feel how you feel. And you have also every right to seeking help whenever you need it to. And we
Yes.
here to supporting you in a very different way, right? But we here to also providing space for you, and maybe that's sometimes that you need it. You don't need to process. You just need someone to hold the ground because it's so shaky for you right now, and you can't even feel it. And coming to a person, and I don't think therapy is the only solution, but if you can find someone who can hold the ground for you as you walking through the shaky path, that's
Yes.
more important.
Yes. So here's another question. I'm combining these two questions because you talked a little bit about, is there a timeline for grief and how long is it supposed to last? But here's my question, Twee, that I'm asking.
What
Why
is it?
can't we just grieve after something happens and just get over it? Why
Oh,
does it have to come back on special occasions or when you go to certain places? Why? Why? No.
right. Oh, there's so many things. Well, let's start with the first one that you asked. Grief doesn't have a timeline. I told you about the analogies, right? That
Yes.
analogy doesn't have a timeline. And I don't think it should have a
No.
period done. I don't think it should have a timeline, especially when it comes into someone that you care deeply or a relationship that you experience for years and years and years or whatever that is, or something that's very important to you. It should not have a cap of a timeline in there and indicate the fact that, oh, you should move on. It's in your term and how you determine it. That grief can show up in years, several years, couple months, and that's it. Like I don't have, and we don't need to questioning that. That's the thing. I don't know why people questioning that, and I don't know how to explain to them to not questioning it out of this point. But I think it's going back to I don't want to feel it anymore, and that's why they're questioning how long it take for the grief to heal. And healing, just like we talk about acceptance, healing that doesn't mean you don't feel grief.
Yes.
Healing mean you're able to manage and move forward with whatever that needed, right?
Yes.
Second question, why and why grief coming back? It's because it's important to you.
Mm,
That's the explanation that I'm going to give out right now. It's because it's important to you. That's why I keep showing back up and say, I'm not done with you yet.
so it's no getting over it
No.
because it's
And
important.
I don't think there's needed to an expectation to get over it. When someone tell me get over it, that means something is very negative.
Hmm.
Then that's the expectation that it is. But grief is not negative. It's showing how much love and care and deepening of that person or the event or the situation to you that is creating a significant impact in you. That is so much depth into that. That why it's important. So to me, when you're asking that, I'm like, why? And I'm like, there's no why. They don't need to be a why. And it just show if you crying and you upset and you go, but that just show how significant that person at that event or whatever that it is impacting you and how much you love and care about that same person. Why would you need to let it go of the love and the care of that?
Right. That is true.
And again, this is my humble opinions. It's not applied for everyone, so please don't say that. Whoa, Twee say this. I'm like, hold on, this is not that.
But it's true though. I like how you put that. It is something that's meaningful. That loved one is meaningful. That situation was meaningful. Even if it was a job, it was meaningful for that moment. And when that unexpected happens, it throws you off.
Yes.
I like how you put that. Thank you. I do. You shared earlier, what are some strategies that people can use to manage their mental health related to grief when that grief occurs?
Would it be bad if I say there's no strategy?
You got my attention.
The first thing that I learned from advanced training from a Greek person, and I remember that the big speaker told me, he said, for the first years of the person who going through grief, we're doing nothing except listening. The reason for that is that there are so much complex in terms of grief that is happening that you intervene by helping it feel better. Sometimes it's actually reflecting, actually resisting that idea of doing it. Allow the process organically show up the way up and you there to say I'm here for you, I'm listening to you, I'm supporting you in the way that you needed to, and do very minimals of that. It's somewhat more helpful than go fix and change grief. So that has been my strategies when it comes to grief client coming to me of asking them, what do you need from me right now? If they tell me, Tweet, I just need a space, I will give them the space in the world to do that. If they say they want to process, I was sitting there and holding the space for them to process and not use intensive process, just talk and reflect and listen and listen and listen. If they tell me coping strategy, I will provide grounding tools. I will tell them this is what we're going to do a lot more, whatever emotions show up, how to managing emotions, regulation tool, writing letters, do activities that you do. And I will add more into those little bit of things that they will say, I need this to be different. But I do very little of my opinions of what do they actually need.
I
Even
like
more so
that.
than in a general therapy, I would ask and I will guide a little bit more. In grief, particular, I don't guide at all.
I like that.
I will hold a space, and no matter what they coming to me for, that's the only thing that I'm absolute with is that I will hold the space for them to be there and sit with them and say, "I'm here with you right now, right here as you experiences that." But I do very little sometimes, and I know some people like, "What? this is what we're gonna do. And I was like, yeah. It's because during the daytime with everything, everyone else already tell them what to do.
That's
They
true.
themselves already tell them what to do. They already deflect, reflect, trying, solution focusing, and other people already tell them that already. They don't need that in therapy.
No, they don't. They don't. Thank you for sharing that because people must understand, and I'm saying must, yes, that's a forceful word, that there is no timeline. You may have to talk, I don't know how many times, how many
Too many.
sessions to
Too
just
many.
process. There's no
Too many.
limit.
I don't think there's an end. That's the thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. And I can guarantee how many. And I would not put a timeline. Okay.
All right, awesome, Twee. Awesome information. So, of course, you're here all the time, and I'm so glad that you come back because my virtual room is your virtual room. So, this space is your space. But just in case people are just starting with this show and you've been on two other shows, can you tell us about your business and how to book appointments? And do you do virtual services and any website information?
Sure. So, my company is called Even Thai Counseling and Consultant, and it's located in Glendale, Arizona. It's right behind the Arrowhead Mall. So, I offer both virtual and in person. We are looking for a third day in person because it's slowly filling up right now. So, it will be Monday, Thursday, and Friday. It will be in person, and any other day will be virtual. So, and I also offer Saturday morning. So if someone like I can't make it on any other day, Saturday morning will be preferable, then I will do that with them. Um, you can find me, just Google my names or even Thai Counseling and Consultants. You will make it showing up. We have our own website. You can even research me on Psychology Today for sure. That's the easiest way to find us for sure. We also have Instagram and Facebook for even Thai counseling and consultant, but preferable reach out from the website or call me in the phone number that is up there would be preferable.
Awesome. And you just currently provide like services in the state of Arizona, right?
Both. In Arizona and I think it's Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yes, that would be the state that I'm still outreaching people and trying to do. But for now, Arizona and Minnesota will be the two that I'm working to get more client perspective from.
All right, you hear that, people in Minnesota? You can get connected with Twee, yes, for services as well. I'm so glad that we have the compact, the counseling compact.
Me
Shout
too.
out for that. I just can't wait till more states can join so we can just
Right?
band together and help people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if anyone watching that lives like outside of Arizona or Minnesota, do you have any resources or websites for them to get connected to someone that's closest to them?
The quickest way that I have my email and I'm accepting any email coming in and I will answer any question or resources. The other thing that I'm slowly right now still we still creating a website for all the resources. So I am adding slowly resources into my website at of this point for grief, for other recommended counselor. If you don't find me benefit, I always have a list of therapists who like I think they are great with what they're doing. Again, they don't pay a single penny for this, so don't feel like I advertise because it just that I know they are good clinicians. So I always
Okay.
put that as a recommending for people who look very specific or unique treatment plan, right? For EMDR, IFS, brain spotting, like those are very different treatment other than CBT, DBT, ACT, and some other one too as well. So I collect that list over time. So I generally just put the list out there for people who prefer certain modality other than others modality. And they were like, oh, maybe try this instead.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we're at the end. Do you have any last words for our listeners or viewers?
Yes. The only last thing when it coming to grief and generally speaking is that, and I know this is going to be the hardest thing that you guys are going to practice, but I want to say, give yourself the permission. Just give yourself the permission to feel. Give yourself the permission to be not normal. Give yourself the permission to feel the chaotic of fluctuate wave between happy, sad, angry, relief, a frustrating bargaining. Give yourself the permission to have space, to be irritated at yourself at point in time, and to be peaceful with yourself at time and point, and also be happy when you think about them or think about situations, because there's always a good part and a bad part of it.
Yes.
So give yourself the permission.
Thank you, Twee. Thank you so much. Um, hopefully, well, not hopefully, I know this will help our listeners and our viewers because it really helped me even with my situation. And thank you for being that accountability person too. And be like, hey, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, yeah, yeah.
I'm so
So,
proud of you. I gotta say that though. I'm so proud of you because this is something that I know it's not easy to say and it's not easy to
yeah.
share. So I couldn't be more prouder as the fact that you willingly to pick this topic, and I'm grateful that you trust me enough to just be here with you. So that's just something that I just want to say thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you too. And thank our viewers and listeners for listening. I
Yes.
mean, this show was like jam packed with information, but when you know that people have a passion to get a message out and to help with the importance of mental health awareness, you know what? It can go longer, but I don't even think about the length of the show. I think about the information that's being provided to just help you. And grief, like we said, is such a complicated topic to actually talk about. So I wouldn't expect for us to be able to do it in our usual time frame. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. And listeners and viewers, thank you for hanging out with us while we tackled this topic of grief and mental health. We called it the bittersweet tea. And it definitely is. It comes with a ray of emotion. So again, we hope that it helps you. This is another episode down in the books, everyone. So take what you've learned when people encounter grief, use some of the strategies that Twee shared with us to be able to support people. All right, so we're going to end the show. It's very hard for me to end it some of the time because I like hanging out with you all, but just remember, do your self-care work, use the strategies that's on the show, but more importantly, if you are dealing with something and you need that extra added support, please seek a higher level of care in your community. You can reach out to Twee. We'll have Twee's information. You can reach out to me at goodteaandreads@gmail.com and we can help you get connected if that's what you need. So, without further ado, remember that Good Tea and Reads is brewing insights and bringing mental health awareness to your fingertips. I am Kimbralon B along with Twee. Hey, that rhymes. And I will see you next time. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.